Hi everyone, it's James here from Production Expert, back with another gear review. Our friends at Arturia recently released a very boldly titled preamp package called 3 preamps you will actually use. So I thought I'd review said 3 preamps. Yes, you've guessed it, there are 3 of them. There is the 1973 Pre, we all know what that's supposed to be. There is the V76 Pre, we all know what that's supposed to be. And there's the TridA Pre. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I've gone on their videos and hopefully the pronunciation is correct. So 3 preamps, we know what they're supposed to be, how do they look and how do they sound? Well, looks-wise, they all follow a fairly similar format to their hardware counterparts. In the case of the 1973 Pre, we have an input gain, we have an output gain, we have this toggle switch between 2 different transformer types, and then we have the EQ section. Now, it has to be said, the EQ is not exactly the same as the original, mainly because the EQ points are sweepable, which is very nice, as opposed to being fixed on the hardware. The gain is also sweepable, as is the output. It's not dedented like it is on the hardware. V76 Pre, again, very similar to the hardware layout. We've got loads of really useful functionality, so we can pair and unpair operation. I'll leave it in paired because this is a stereo track. We've then got fantastic sounding, really powerful EQ, phase invert for each channel, input gain and output trim. Now the TridA Pre, of course, is going to work slightly differently because the preamp and the EQ that it's based on are so completely different to any other type of EQ and preamp known to mankind. But we've got all the normal stuff we'd expect to find on the hardware. We've got low pass, we've got 4 bands of EQ with cut and boost on sliders. We've then got a high pass filter section for both sides. We can switch between left and right and MS mode, which is really nice. Our input gain, EQ bypass, phase invert, and our output trim for both sides. Really, really cool. So on this track I've been working on recently, I have applied the 1973 Pre across all the drums, my normal kit and caboodle of drums, and the bass, a single DI bass channel. I've got a little bit of DBX 160 for compression, and then I am hitting the 1973 Pre. I'm going in quite hard because I want to get some of that, let's face it, Neve-esque tone, and I'm pulling back a little bit so my gain staging is accurate. But let me just play the before and after of the bass part on its own with the 1973. I really like that. The high-pass filter is a very powerful tool in this particular plugin. The EQ section is in, of course. I'm using Transformer Type 1. It's subtle. It's just giving the bass... It's controlling the bass. It's controlling the bottom end. It's tightening it all up a little bit, but giving it a bit more character, a bit more flavour. Now, the keyboard parts are both running through the V76 Pre. I've got some strings and a piano part. So I'm going to show you how I'm using the V76 on the piano. It's not the most interesting of piano parts, it's pretty sparse, but you can see and hear exactly what I'm doing. I'm pushing a little bit of top end, I'm pulling out a little bit of that bottom end, rolling off at 80 Hz, and just driving it quite hard, again, to get that kind of German Telefunken kind of sound. So lastly, I've put the TridA onto the guitar parts. We've got we've got a rhythm guitar part and a lead. So let's have a listen to the rhythm. I'm just using this to try and do what we do to rhythm guitars and get rid of all the bottom end, so we just get some detail and some stereo image. just cleaning it up, getting rid of that unwanted bottom end. We don't use bottom end on rhythm guitars, we don't need it. So the lead guitar part is being pushed a little bit more heavily, if you like. Again, I want that kind of classic Trident sound. It sounded great for guitars, ask Brian May. So let's listen to how I've used it on this guitar part. Again, I'm being quite brutal with the amount of bottom end I'm losing. It's getting in the way of that lovely bass tone and the kick drum. So now we put this all together, we get the following. So it's a bit of a departure from what the team at Arturia would normally do. I think of them and know them best as synth heads and doing that kind of stuff. But this is a really good use of their modelling technology. I think the preamps sound great. Whether you think they sound like the originals or not, it doesn't matter. Because let's face it, there have been so many different iterations of all of the 3 hardware versions of those preamps. You're never going to get that many the same unless you buy a console, and let's face it, who's going to do that these days? So a big thumbs up from me to the team at Arturia for 3 preamps you will actually use. I think they're right. I think I actually will use these babies in recordings. They're really easy to use, really easy to set up, and as you can see, not all that thirsty when it comes down to it. We've got a few instances running here, but as you can see, my machine is really not being all that stressed out by it. So what I will do is in the Pro Tools Expert story down there somewhere, I will put the processed version of the track and the unre-preed version, so you can have a listen in the comfort of your own home. But for now, my name's James Ivey, and I'll see you again very soon for some more Gear Talk.